Excuse me, Lieutenant. Is there something wrong?
Yes, ma'am. The data on the MiG is inaccurate.
When Top Gun roared into cinemas in 1986, audiences saw a glossy, adrenaline-soaked fantasy about the best pilots in the Navy. What they did not see were the script pages quietly revised in Pentagon offices, the stunt pilot who never made it home from a spin over the Pacific, the actor who tried to avoid his role, or the lead actress studios almost replaced. Behind the mirrored aviators and F-14 afterburners was a production shaped by military image management, reluctant stars, and real risk in the sky. Some of those stories were proudly told. Others were buried in interviews, accident reports, and casting notes. In this documentary, we crack open the canopy and reveal 21 weird facts you almost never hear about Top Gun. The Pentagon helped rewrite the story. From the very beginning, Top Gun was not just a movie about the US military. It was a movie made with the US military. Producers wanted access to real F-14 Tomcats, aircraft carriers, and bases, and that meant accepting the Department of Defense's terms. According to reporting on the film's production, the Navy and Pentagon agreed to provide equipment and cooperation in exchange for the right to review and request changes to the script. One of the most striking examples involves Goose's death. Early drafts reportedly had him die in a mid-air collision, but the Navy objected because it suggested that too many pilots were crashing. The script was changed so his death came from an ejection accident during a flat spin instead, preserving drama but softening institutional blame. More broadly, Top Gun became a textbook case of what critics call the military entertainment complex, where films receive hardware and authenticity, while the Pentagon quietly shapes how war, pilots, and the services are portrayed. A stunt pilot died filming, a flat spin for the movie. The most sobering story behind Top Gun belongs to Art Scholl, a veteran aerobatic pilot and aerial cameraman. Scholl was hired to capture high-risk flight footage that ordinary pilots and standard camera mounts could not safely provide. On September 16, 1985, he took off in a Pitts S-2 camera plane near Carlsbad, California, to film a spin sequence that would support the movie's dramatic flight scenes. Witnesses reported that he intentionally entered a spin, but the aircraft did not recover at the planned altitude. Scholl radioed, "I have a problem. A real problem," before his plane plunged into the Pacific. Despite an intensive search, neither the aircraft nor his body were ever recovered, and investigators could not conclusively determine the cause. Production paused, and the final film carries a dedication in his honor. Later coverage noted how eerily his real flat spin paralleled the fictional crisis that claims Goose's life. For most viewers, the shot is just another thrilling beat in an action film. For those who know the story, it is a reminder that at least one man died trying to give the movie its unforgettable realism. The tower flyby was built on a real low pass. I feel the need for speed is legendary, but the moment that really rattled audiences was Maverick's tower flyby. Coffee spills, windows shake, and a furious officer demands, "I want some butts." The sequence plays like pure attitude, yet it is rooted in real aerial filming on active Navy facilities. Production accounts describe how director Tony Scott and his team relied heavily on genuine carrier and base operations, then requested specific flybys to sell the spectacle on camera. Future NASA astronaut Scott Altman, then a Navy pilot, flew several of those key maneuvers, including the famous buzzing the tower shot that startled people on and around the base. The reaction was so intense that local residents reportedly called in complaints about a berserk pilot, not realizing they had just witnessed a movie setup. Real fighter pilots later pointed out that a stunt like Maverick's would be career suicide in actual service. As the Top Gun article itself notes, buzzing a control tower like that would almost certainly result in a pilot losing flight status. That tension between authentic hardware and exaggerated behavior is exactly what gives the scene its mythic punch. Val Kilmer tried to avoid playing Iceman. It is almost impossible to picture Top Gun without Val Kilmer's icy stare and clipped delivery as Iceman. Yet Kilmer has repeatedly said he did not want to do the film. In interviews and in retrospectives on his career, he explained that he thought the script was silly and disliked what he viewed as its warmongering tone. The crucial detail is contractual. He was under a multi-picture deal and could not simply refuse the role. His agent, who also represented Tom Cruise, pushed him into meeting Tony Scott. And despite giving what he later described as an indifferent audition, he was cast anyway. Because the character felt thin on the page, Kilmer constructed his own internal backstory for Iceman, imagining him as a hyper-disciplined perfectionist shaped by family pressure and an obsession with doing everything by the book. That personal work sharpened the rivalry with Maverick, turning Iceman from a cardboard antagonist into a believable counterpart whose criticism actually makes sense. The irony is sharp. One of the film's most authentic performances came from an actor who tried quite hard not to be there at all. Kelly McGillis was not the studio's first choice. Kelly McGillis's Charlie is crucial to Top Gun, a civilian astrophysicist and instructor who can challenge Maverick intellectually and emotionally. But she was not the studio's initial vision. Casting breakdowns and later reporting reveal that Paramount originally considered a slate of more conventional 1980s stars, including Brooke Shields, Demi Moore, Deborah Winger, and others, as they searched for a younger, more traditionally glamorous lead. Director Tony Scott and the creative team argued that McGillis's performance in Witness proved she could carry a role that required authority, technical credibility, and warmth, not just romance. Meanwhile, real-world politics shaped the character on the page. A Washington Post piece notes that early drafts made Charlie a military officer, but the Navy objected to an on-screen relationship between two officers while lending its bases and jets. The solution was to rework her as a civilian expert, inspired by real analyst Christine Fox, who advised the Navy and later became Acting Deputy Secretary of Defense. The result is a love interest who is also a mentor and critic, a rare dynamic for 1980s action cinema, and one that almost never happened in that form. Cruise needed apple boxes and camera tricks to match height. Tom Cruise's on-screen confidence often makes viewers forget how much technical effort went into maintaining physical balance within the cast. Cruise is about 5'7" a scene, while Kelly McGillis stands around 5'10". That height difference created challenges for framing romantic scenes, especially because directors in the 1980s favored balanced eye lines between actors. According to production accounts and numerous interviews, Cruise frequently stood on apple boxes, wooden risers traditionally used to adjust actor height. Directors and cinematographers also relied on clever blocking, placing Cruise on higher ground, having McGillis sit or lean, or framing scenes from angles that minimized the disparity. The strategy was not unusual for Hollywood, but it became so closely linked to Cruise that discussions about his height became part of pop culture lore. Articles examining the film's behind-the-scenes notes confirmed that the production team used all the tricks available. Rather than diminishing Cruise's presence, the adjustments allowed him to appear as the charismatic, commanding Maverick audiences came to love. For a film built on swagger, confidence, and bold physicality, maintaining visual authority was essential, even if it required help from a few inches of wood. Goose's death was inspired by a real aviation accident. Goose's death is one of the most emotional moments in Top Gun, and many assume it was purely dramatic fiction. But the scene is rooted in real-life aviation incidents involving F-14 Tomcats. During the early 1980s, multiple Navy reports documented flat spins and ejection seat malfunctions involving the aircraft's canopy. In these cases, the jet entered an unrecoverable spin, and when crew members attempted to eject, the canopy did not fully clear in time, sometimes causing blunt force injuries or fatalities. Writers Jack Epps Jr. and Jim Cash researched actual Navy accident records and used these documented dangers as the technical basis for Goose's on-screen death. This approach allowed filmmakers to keep the emotional weight without implying negligence within the Navy's chain of command, something the Pentagon explicitly monitored during script revisions. Aviation historians and U.S. Navy sources confirm that canopy strike injuries were a known risk in certain F-14 ejections, providing a grim echo to the film's fictional tragedy. Although dramatized, Goose's death remains one of the film's most technically accurate portrayals of real combat aviation hazards. The volleyball scene was added last minute for MTV appeal. Few scenes in Top Gun are as iconic or as puzzling as the slow-motion beach volleyball sequence. Surprisingly, the scene was not in the script's early drafts. Paramount executives wanted a music video-style montage to appeal to MTV's exploding aesthetic music culture in the mid-1980s. Director Tony Scott later said the studio high-energy break in the plot that could function almost like a commercial for the film. Scott shot the scene in a single afternoon under blazing sunlight, even after losing the location earlier that morning. He described the moment as pure MTV heat, which is exactly how audiences received it. The cast trained intensely for weeks to achieve the sculpted, athletic look that made the sequence so memorable. Although the scene has been parodied endlessly, it became a defining snapshot of 1980s cinema, a fusion of music, bodies, sweat, and sun, designed to capture viewers who might not even care about aviation. What began as a late addition engineered for pop appeal became one of the most famous moments in the entire film. Maverick's jacket included real intelligence patches. Maverick's leather flight jacket, one of the film's most recognizable costumes, contains a series of patches that reference real Navy history, including controversial Cold War-era missions. The jacket's back panel shows patches tied to U.S. naval deployments in the Western Pacific, including ones associated with the USS Galveston and USS Oriskany, both of which served in real-world operations during periods of geopolitical tension. Some of the patches reference locations such as Japan, Taiwan, and the Philippines, echoing actual naval presence in the region from the 1960s and 1970s. Costume designers intended Maverick's jacket to symbolize legacy and family heritage, especially since the character's father was written as a fallen Navy pilot with a classified history. Decades later, discussions about the patches resurfaced when Top Gun Maverick changed them due to concerns about modern US-China relations, a move widely covered in global media. For the 1986 film, though, the patches served as genuine historical nods to real missions and command tours, embedding Maverick within authentic Navy lineage even before he steps into the cockpit. The Great Balls of Fire piano scene was never planned. Great Balls of Fire, sung by Goose at the piano, is one of the most charming and humanizing scenes in Top Gun. Yet, it was not part of the formal production plan. The bar where it was filmed, Kansas City Barbecue in San Diego, wasn't even a designated filming location until two production members wandered inside during a scouting break. They immediately pitched it to Tony Scott. The piano inside the bar, which became the centerpiece of the moment, was not placed there by the film crew. It was part of the bar's normal decor. When Anthony Edwards sat down to play, most of the scene was improvised, building on the crew's desire for a warm, character-building moment before the story darkened. The bar later became a tourist landmark for fans until it was severely damaged in a 2008 fire. After rebuilding, it still displays memorabilia from the film, including items tied to the impromptu piano sequence. What audiences embraced as a core emotional moment began as a spontaneous discovery, a reminder that some of the film's heart came from pure chance. Tony Scott was briefly fired from the aircraft. Director Tony Scott had a bold visual style that often pushed boundaries, especially when capturing aircraft in motion. During a day of shooting aboard the USS Enterprise, Scott wanted a specific lighting angle on the F-14S as the carrier changed course. He asked the ship's captain to alter direction, so the sunlight hit the aircraft perfectly. The captain declined because the maneuver would cost fuel and interrupt the ship's operations. Scott was so determined to get the shot that he reportedly offered the captain $25,000 from the movie's budget. The captain refused again. Scott then ordered the film crew to keep rolling, filmed without authorization, and caused confusion on the deck. This violation of procedure led to him being removed from the carrier for a short period until the issue was resolved. Although the incident frustrated Navy officials, the resulting footage became part of the film's signature imagery. Scott's insistence on perfect lighting contributed to the polished look that made the movie feel larger than life. His brief removal from the carrier is a reminder of how far he went to create the film's unforgettable visual texture. Filming real F-14 EOS cost more than $10,000 per hour. To achieve the realistic dogfights that defined Top Gun, the production rented real F-14 Tomcats and required extensive cooperation from Navy pilots and ground crews. These jets were some of the most advanced and expensive aircraft of their era, According to publicly available Navy contract information and reporting on the film's production, flying and supporting an F-14 cost the studio more than $10,000 for each hour of flight time. This figure covered fuel, maintenance personnel, and operational support. Tony Scott later said that because access was so expensive, he often filmed as much as possible during every available flight window. This agreement made the movie one of the costliest aviation productions of its time. The expense paid off because it delivered flight scenes that were far beyond what Hollywood could produce with models or early computer effects. The real F-14 footage became a major selling point in promotional campaigns and helped cement the film as a technical showcase. Although the Navy provided significant support, the studio still absorbed extraordinary costs, making every minute of airborne footage precious and high stakes. The film caused a massive spike in Navy recruitment. When Top Gun premiered, the Navy saw a surge in public interest, unlike anything it had experienced in years. Recruitment offices across the United States reported dramatic increases in the number of young men inquiring about aviation programs. The Navy capitalized on the momentum by placing recruitment booths directly in movie theater lobbies. Reports from the era indicate that applications to naval aviation programs increased by as much as 500% in some regions. The Navy confirmed that the film had a measurable and immediate effect on enlistment. Former Navy officials and multiple news outlets have acknowledged Top Gun as one of the most successful recruitment tools in modern military history. The movie's portrayal of camaraderie, speed, and heroism created a powerful image of naval aviation that inspired thousands of viewers. Although the film simplified the realities of military service, the effect on public perception was undeniable. The partnership between Hollywood and the Navy delivered visible benefits to both, shaping an entire generation's understanding of military aviation. Real fighter pilots mock the famous inverted maneuver. One of the boldest shots in Top Gun shows Maverick flipping his F-14 upside down and flying directly above a Soviet MiG while giving a cheeky salute. The scene is thrilling, but real fighter pilots have long pointed out that the maneuver is not physically viable. Numerous naval aviators interviewed over the years have explained that the aerodynamic conditions required for two jets to fly inverted and upright in such close proximity would cause severe turbulence and likely destroy both aircraft. They also noted that closing to that distance without firing or evasive action would violate combat doctrine. The shot was created for dramatic effect rather than accuracy, and the filmmakers never claimed it was realistic. Instead, it symbolized Maverick's reckless confidence and the movie's heightened style. The moment became iconic and remains one of the most quoted scenes in aviation pop culture, but pilots consistently cite it as an example of Hollywood spectacle rather than authentic flying. Tom Cruise tried to perform real stunts the Navy refused to allow. Tom Cruise has always been known for performing his own stunts, and his ambition started long before the Mission Impossible series. During Top Gun, he repeatedly asked Navy officials for permission to ride in the back seat during high-risk maneuvers and even requested to try basic hands-on flying. Navy advisors turned down many of these requests, citing safety and liability issues. They did allow Cruise to fly in the rear seat of an F-14 during controlled maneuvers, and he later described the experience as overwhelming due to the immense G-forces. However, anything beyond closely managed passenger flights was off-limits. Producers recalled that Cruise's eagerness pushed the boundaries of what the Navy was comfortable approving. The actor's persistence foreshadowed the stunt-driven career he would later build. Although he had limited control in the cockpit, the experience helped him portray Maverick with the authenticity and intensity that audiences responded to so strongly. Meg Ryan and Tim Robbins filmed extra scenes that were removed. Meg Ryan and Tim Robbins brought warmth and authenticity to their supporting roles as Carol Bradshaw and Merlin, but many viewers do not realize that several of their scenes were filmed and later cut during the editing process. Early drafts gave Carol more emotional moments, including extended conversations with Goose and reflective scenes after his death. Tim Robbins also had additional cockpit and locker room footage that established Merlin's cautious personality and deep respect for Maverick. These scenes strengthened the ensemble, but slowed the pacing, so editors removed them to keep the film focused on Maverick's arc. Cast interviews confirm that both actors shot more material than audiences ever saw. When the film became a cultural phenomenon, fans wondered why Carol Bradshaw felt so vivid on screen, despite limited screen time. The answer lies in the hours of footage that supported her character, but never made the theatrical cut. Even in their reduced roles, Ryan and Robbins helped humanize the story, grounding the spectacle in real relationships and emotions that remain essential to the movie's lasting appeal. Jet sound effects included modified animal growls. The roar of the F-14 Tomcat is one of the most distinctive sounds in Top Gun. Yet the audio you hear in the film is not the pure sound of an aircraft engine. Sound designers revealed that they mixed real jet recordings with altered animal growls to create a deeper and more dramatic tone. Lions, tigers, and even growling bears were blended into the low frequency layers to give the aircraft an aggressive presence that ordinary jet audio could not produce. This practice is common in film sound design because raw engine noise often lacks the emotional character needed for cinematic impact. By combining real F-14 recordings with animal textures, sound engineers created a signature audio identity that made every afterburner and flyby feel more powerful than reality. The technique helped elevate the film's action sequences, giving the jets a personality that audiences felt as much as heard. It became one of the many creative choices that pushed Top Gun beyond simple realism and into heightened spectacle. Maverick's motorcycle was not street legal at the time. Maverick's Kawasaki GPZ 900R became an instant icon in the film, symbolizing speed, rebellion, and independence. What many fans do not know is that the version used in Top Gun featured modifications that were not fully street legal under California regulations at the time. Reports from motorcycle historians note that the production bike had altered exhaust elements and performance adjustments that pushed beyond approved emission standards. In the 1980s, California maintained some of the strictest road compliance rules in the United States, and certain modifications used for the movie did not meet official street requirements. The motorcycle sequences were shot on controlled roads and airbase areas where production teams could manage safety and legal considerations. This allowed the filmmakers to push the bike visually and mechanically without the limits that apply to ordinary riders. The film's use of the GPZ 900R helped launch the motorcycle into global fame, with sales increasing significantly after the premiere. It remains one of the most recognizable bikes in cinema history. The entire film was inspired by a single magazine article. Before Top Gun became a blockbuster, the concept originated from a magazine article titled Top Guns, published in California Magazine in 1983. Written by journalist Ehud Yoneh, the piece offered a vivid look inside the Navy Fighter Weapons School at Naval Air Station Miramar. The article profiled real pilots and instructors, described their training routines, and explored the psychological challenges of mastering air combat. Producers Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer found the piece compelling, especially its descriptions of intense training, competitive rivalries, and high-risk maneuvers. They purchased the rights to the article and used it as the foundation for a story about elite fighter pilots. Several details in the film, including the competitive structure and even the atmosphere of Miramar, were inspired directly by Yoneh's reporting. This origin surprised many viewers who assumed the film began with a fictional screenplay. Instead, it grew out of real journalism that captured the drama and danger of naval aviation long before the cameras rolled. Test audiences initially disliked the original cut. The first test screenings of Top Gun did not receive the enthusiastic reactions the studio expected. According to editors and producers, viewers found the early cut confusing because the aerial scenes were difficult to follow. Without clear explanations or added dialogue, audiences struggled to understand which pilot was in which jet during key dogfights. This feedback forced the studio to undertake significant adjustments. They added clarifying lines, inserted new dialogue scenes, and filmed additional sequences with Kelly McGillis and Tom Cruise to strengthen the film's emotional core. One of the most important fixes was recording extra cockpit lines that identified call signs and intentions. These insert shots improved clarity and helped audiences track the story during intense flight sequences. The changes transformed the film from a visually impressive but confusing experience into a polished blockbuster. It stands as an example of how test screenings can reshape a major studio production. Paramount executives originally thought the film would fail. Despite the film's high concept premise and impressive military cooperation, Early internal reactions at Paramount were not confident. Studio executives reportedly believed the movie had thin plotting, too much technical jargon, and not enough emotional depth. According to retrospective interviews with producers and crew members, some decision-makers even predicted a box office disappointment. They worried that audiences would not connect with the aviation-heavy story, and that the marketing would struggle to communicate its appeal. This skepticism changed quickly once the first full trailer was released, and test audiences reacted far more positively than expected. The soundtrack also became a major selling point, with Take My Breath Away and Danger Zone pushing excitement into mainstream pop culture. The shift from doubt to overwhelming success is now part of the film's legacy. What began as a project viewed with caution ended up becoming one of the defining films of the decade, and a global cultural phenomenon. In the end, Top Gun became far more than a film about fighter pilots. It became a symbol of ambition, risk, and defiance, shaped by the people who pushed the boundaries of filmmaking and the pilots who carried real danger in the sky. Behind every iconic frame was a story of compromise, courage, or creativity that few viewers ever learned. From script pages rewritten under Pentagon oversight to stunts shaped by tragedy and improvisation, the movie's legacy lives not only in its visuals, but in the strange and unexpected choices that forged it. Nearly 4 decades later, the world still feels the afterburn of a film that soared higher than anyone at Paramount ever imagined.